U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin dropped in Baghdad unannounced earlier today. The surprise visit comes nearly 20 years after the U.S.-led invasion of the country, leading to the toppling of the Saddam Hussein government. Austin is the highest-ranking member of the U.S. President Joe Biden's administration to visit Iraq. In Baghdad, Austin said his visit sought to reaffirm the U.S.-Iraq strategic partnership towards a more secure, stable and sovereign Iraq.
We're deeply committed to ensuring that the Iraqi people can live in peace and dignity, with safety and security, and with economic opportunity for all.
The 2003 U.S. invasion led to the deaths of over 200,000 Iraqi civilians. It also created decades of instability that eventually paved the way for the rise of the Islamic State terror group after the U.S. withdrew its forces in 2011. Lloyd Austin was the last commanding general of U.S. forces in Iraq after the invasion. After meeting Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammad al-Sudani, this is what Austin said.
Now, looking forward, U.S. forces are ready to remain in Iraq at the invitation of the government of Iraq. Now, these forces are operating in a non-combat advise, assist, and enable role to support the Iraqi-led fight against terrorism.
The United States currently has 2,500 troops in Iraq and an additional 900 in Syria. The U.S. says the forces are stationed to help advise and assist local troops in combating the Islamic State terror group. In 2014, ISIS seized swaths of territory in these two countries. At a time when the U.S. appears to be shifting its focus away from West Asia, Austin's surprise Iraq visit says something different. In fact, while in Baghdad, Austin reaffirmed Washington's commitment towards the security of the region. Continuation of stationing troops in the region also points in this direction. For more on this, we're now joined by Elizabeth Leris. She's an adjunct fellow at the Pacific Forum in Washington, D.C. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us here on WION. How do you look at the U.S. Defense Secretary's visit to Iraq? And do you believe some of the utterances he's made in Baghdad point towards the possibility of the U.S. considering having more boots on the ground in Iraq?
The Secretary Austin's trip is really threefold. The first, of course, is to reaffirm U.S. commitment to Iraq and to peace in the region. The third is to contain Iran's influence, powerful influence in the region. And then he's going on to Egypt and Israel, at least, to address Russia-Iran military cooperation. So regarding reaffirming U.S. commitment to the region, I doubt that the Biden administration will put more boots on the ground. I sincerely doubt that there is U.S. public support for such a move. And I think that would be spreading U.S. forces too thin, as the Biden administration is keeping a very keen eye on developments in China. So although, the United States has about 2,500 troops in non-combat roles, like advise and assist type roles there. However, Islamic State is still active there and carrying out terrorist activities. And so the U.S., is committed to addressing that. But at this point, I'd be surprised if the U.S. would put more troops in. President Biden has declared the war over there, as he did in Afghanistan. I think that he would be reluctant to restart things there. Certainly, the United States is concerned by Iran's influence. And in the relatively new Prime Minister al-Sudani, who became Prime Minister of Iraq in October, that opened the door for more U.S.-Iraq cooperation, again explaining Secretary Austin's trip.
All right, and you're right that perhaps the Biden administration would not really be keen to send more troops to Iraq, given that President Biden actually is looking to run for the White House again in 2024, and given that he made the drastic decision in 2021 of a complete U.S. troop withdrawal from Afghanistan. A decision of this nature would be counterintuitive. But given the geopolitics of the entire region and how the U.S. perceives it, you talked about the strained ties between Iran and the United States, and given the changing relationship between Saudi Arabia and Washington, do you believe the Biden administration is trying to find fresh foothold in West Asia through Iraq?
Oh, absolutely. We know that there's significant tension, at least there was, between President Biden and the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. I mean, President Biden had even asked, the Crown Prince to increase production of oil to bring down the prices of oil in the United States. And the Crown Prince, refused, saying, hey, look, oil is selling for less than $80 a barrel. That's pretty average. We don't need to increase production, make it cheaper for you, in the United States. And so the big issue is, yes, countering Iran's influence and also the Russian-Iran military cooperation. Iran is supplying arms to Russia in its war against Ukraine, and that is quite troubling to the United States. So it's extremely important that the United States start with a new step with Saudi Arabia as well as UAE and other Gulf states. The Gulf states historically have been reluctant to get involved in big power politics, but the United States still sells billions of dollars of arms to Saudi Arabia and UAE and has supported them in its war against the Houthis in Yemen. And so I know there's a lot going on there, but it's extremely important for the United States to have, good relations with Saudi Arabia.
All right. Very interesting perspective that. On that note, Elizabeth Lyris, thank you so much for speaking to WION.
You're welcome.